this is a great place to learn your settings because you're going to use them all every day probably. So, any question about rig tune at all?
Question
Not rig tune. Yeah,
Not rig tune? Yep.
How much do you move the Genoa leads?
Yes.
Move them back in the breeze or leave them?
Yeah, so for us today, we had kind of our base touch setting with the leech and then the foot on the spreader and the shrouds. And then as the day got windier, we probably came back to where if we touched on the bottom, we were 2 inches open on the top. So we'd really wind it in. And then as it got really breezy, I think we actually went forward 1 hole again, right? To be able to ease the Genoa out in those big puffs and not lose the leech. So we're probably playing 3 holes max on our cars, and it seemed pretty good. It'd be a little different if it was choppier for us. We'd probably stay in that touch scenario so that we can ease and get through the chop. How about you, Mike? Jib leads today.
Yeah, I think we were pretty close. I think we probably moved it back a hole or 2 holes in the middle of the day. But I think the other thing to remember is that halyard tension makes a huge difference. So if as you go through the range, as you get more and more halyard tension on, you end up closing the top, and so you end up losing the top less. So you can be more active as you get through the halyard range of dropping the car back a hole. But once you get to the top of the halyard range, it's kind of what Travis was saying. As soon as you start easing the jib, you kind of end up having to move it forward, back forward again. So we were probably at our max back maybe 1 or 2, and then we were back to base by the last race, I think, because we started easing. And again, we were just kind of looking for that little extra grunt in the big lulls, because the lulls are really huge. So we kind of kept it a little bit further forward just because in the big lulls you could keep a little extra depth in the bottom of the sail.
And Bill, for your Genoa stuff.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I would say pretty much exactly what Mike was doing. We try to be pretty conscious about not moving them too far out aft once we're at the point where we're easing a lot, because we don't want the top of the Genoa to just disappear on you. And so that's, I think, pretty important. And it's really hard, I find, because I sail a bunch of different boats. I find it's really hard in the 24 when the breeze really comes on, keeping the boat moving when it's blowing hard. It's hard to keep the bow down, and you got to really ease the Genoa a lot, and it's really hard. And I think the best people go the fastest are really good at that. That's kind of an observation. I think you guys both did a great job of that today.
Yeah, just one more thing on the Genoa. That's exactly right with how much you have to ease. I think as it gets breezier, I mean, the middle of the day was kind of medium to breezy, and we could really trim pretty hard with the Genoa. But as you just can't keep the boat on the feet, we probably had the Genoa on the lifelines for 50% of the beat in that last race, or maybe towards the end of the third race. Just trying to keep the boat on its feet and going forward, and that's really the only way to do it. So seems like we're all in the same place, about 3 holes that we're using, whether it's forward, aft, looking for touch and the lighter stuff and lump, and probably opening it up at the top a little bit as it gets breezier.